Good morning, friends. Welcome to number 14 in this current crop of out-of-body journal experiences. And some interesting topics and personalities to be covered today. Now, whoa, sorry about that, my mistake. A little bit of get us going from excursions to the spirit world, which we've been reading from quite a bit. This book was published in the 1960s, and some of the experiences were reflecting of many years earlier too. So there's a few little time anomalies here, but the experiences are fascinating. Some may think that uncanny things happen in the next world. They do, but they are rather different from what is expected. I had been taken to a children's nursery, a very bright place, the corridors and rooms being all in white. I was watching some small children in one of the rooms when through an open door bounded a dog. It was one of those big stuffed rag dogs with button eyes and comical bent feet that the children love to play with. But I was astonished when I saw that the quote-unquote thing was moving like a real dog. My earthly mind had at least expected some stiff mechanical or clockwork movement, but every action had the perfect mannerisms of a live animal. It was something that could never be seen on Earth, and the suddenness gave me a most uncanny feeling which I cannot describe. Presently an older girl, who appeared to be in charge of the little ones, saw the dog and said, "Johnny, what are you doing here? Go back to your room." And Johnny obediently turned and went out through the door. I sensed that this toy was animated by an advanced spirit in charge of the place. Earthly interests are often retained by the spirit mind for a long time. Many years ago, I had a mandolin and was slow in memorizing some of the pieces I used to play, which meant much concentration on the music and searching for the frets on the instrument. In a house in spirit, I saw a mandolin with a plectrum, picked it up and played Beethoven's Minuet in G without a mistake, remembering every note and position. The subtle electrical spirit mind was hampered by the physical body. On one occasion, my wife took me to a concert on the other side. There was the usual stage or platform, and one of the performers was a singer, a man. I liked his voice, but I thought his gestures were rather overdone. As I thought this, he glanced quickly in my direction and modified his movements. Towards the end of the song, however, he began to use his arms very freely again, and in a grand finale, I thought he looked silly. After he'd finished, he walked to the front of the stage and stared at me with a look of annoyance. Much to my relief, we got up and left the hall, but in a rather thoughtful mood, and outside I suddenly realized that the singer had received all my thoughts. I am afraid that earthly habits like this must be taken some time to correct. That's intriguing to me, reporting on the concerts and club performances that I have. I guess I'd be seeing musicians that I was fond of and whose music I enjoyed, so I wouldn't feel critical. I might be just sort of a little curious. As I've mentioned, were the people, the players, who the spirit versions of the people I thought they were, or were the other musicians who so admired the more famous ones that they started to look like them? Not in any sense of fraud, but more in a sense of devotion and love. Once when I was projected to a room in a museum, I was deposited on a chair and I became conscious and began to notice the surroundings, and a man approached, evidently surprised by my sudden appearance and unformed state. He was curious and wanted to touch me, but when he was about arm's length away, he suddenly jumped back as if he had received an electrical shock. He tried it several times and began to look like a cat around a hedgehog. Now fully conscious, I stood up and said, "You need healing," and grasped his hands. He immediately sank to the floor as if in a faint. I do not know why I did this, but I have been prompted by my spirit helper, and although surprised, I was not perturbed and left him comfortably sleeping, knowing he would soon recover. I believe this was the effect of the difference of potential mentioned earlier. On a dull day in winter, I had projected from an armchair by the fire and had taken to my house in spirit. Soon, this has been described in many other projections earlier. Soon after I arrived, the room began to appear alternately light and dark, like the effect of a cinema projector running too slowly. It had a very disagreeable effect on me and seemed like an earthly headache, but with a quicker drumming and intensity. It was not to be endured, and I was drawn back to the body. The headache continued until I had regained full physical consciousness. I found that it was caused by a gaseous piece of coal flickering on the hitherto dull fire. The incident interested me considerably because in this case my physical body had no discomfort, and the cause seemed trivial. I believe that the flickering light of the coal had some effect on the physical body, or even directly on the astral cord, causing a quickly alternating wavelength or vibration which would affect only the spirit body. There is a cataleptic state on returning to the physical body, but this is realized only if one tries to move at once. On returning from an earlier projection, I was quite content to lie and watch the symbol on the ceiling of the bedroom. Those symbols seem to appear quite often for him. Then one night I projected while lying on my side. When I returned, I at once tried to roll over on my back, a very simple operation, but was absolutely powerless and frightened. However, in a few seconds, which in my fright seemed ages, full power returned. Anyway, it was an instructive experience, and it made me fully realize that I and my physical body are two different parts. I had been away, and on my return, I must permeate my brain in order to give my orders through my nerves as to what muscles I wish to use for this physical condition. Later, when I became experienced, I thought it fun on returning to an armchair to quickly try to raise an arm which appeared to be as lifeless as a piece of wood until I got back into it. On return, the life force seemed to pour back into the physical body. First to the mentality and then the eyes, then to the body and the extremities. A day projection seems to give me rest and refreshment, and it's not like an afternoon nap when one is apt to get up yawning and stretching. Yes, well, his experiences are always intriguing, are they not? Excuse me while I have some refreshment. Bruce Moen was quite an influence on me in my early days. I read all of his books describing his experiences at the Monroe Institute, at the various programs, and then his increasing abilities to maneuver around the astral plane in the various focus levels. And he also had a website, afterlifeknowledge.com, in which many of us wrote about and compared our experiences and shared notes, which was extremely useful, especially when you're starting out. And had communicated with him on several occasions. And he seemed to, after some years, either through a desire to retire from public life or illness, maybe a bit of both, I'm not sure, had someone else run the site. And I heard yet later that he'd had an illness and passed on. And knew that he was so able and efficient and knowledgeable about life on the other side that he would have no problems adjusting, and did not feel in any way concerned about him, any more than one might feel concerned about Bob Monroe, who had preceded him. These were astral adepts of a certain level, and would be quite comfortable there. And but I always acknowledged his great influence on me, and his great way that his teaching and his website brought me ahead in my own functionality. Recently I've been rereading one of his books, A Voice to Curiosity's Father, in which he, through the help of spirit guides and others, explores some of the details of the various hell realms and hollow heavens. And the descriptions are quite long and would perhaps be too long for these videos. But I'll go back over them and see if I can sort of edit them down a bit, because they are very interesting. And, you know, when you read about hell realms that for people that are emotional sadists, and people who are thieves, and are totally wrapped up in stealing. And I was thinking of that, and it takes them ages to get out of this. They steal from each other, and they play head games on each other, and as a continuation of the various kinds of thievery that they practiced here on Earth. And it's a frustrating hell. It's not like a hellfire and brimstone hell. And it's to do with possessions, you know. And I was thinking of it because just recently watching a Netflix documentary on spycraft, and there's a narrative by a historian of spying and the various methods used. And he talked at one point about where recently they get so efficient at stealing information, and through electronic means, of course, the more modern way. And they get caught in did he use the word game? They get caught in some lifestyle where they're constantly stealing information and finding new ways to do it without the quote-unquote enemy discovering, which electronically is relatively easy, apparently. And cell phones, of course, being one of the major tools, and encryption sites, and, you know, yada yada. And sort of talking about getting caught in this endless tussle between stealing information and not letting the enemy find out, and worrying about the enemy stealing information from them and without them finding out. And I thought, oh, isn't that just like thief's hell? And so another interesting little comparison. Well, these people involved in electronic spycraft, as opposed to the more traditional, you know, in the Cold War, Russian fellows would, East Germans actually, act like Romeos to lonely women that worked for NATO and court them over years and get them to steal photocopy papers from the NATO headquarters. So just a little comparison. You see things in contemporary society where you think, well, you'd never get caught up in all this theft stuff. It just seems bizarre. Yet there are people whose lifestyles revolve around that. And we don't just mean petty theft. So I've been thinking a lot about Bruce Moen and feeling like I should be able to contact him. And hadn't thought about him in years. This is fairly new. But as I said, seemed like an astral adept, really, to me, and not one to be concerned about. Unlike some of the people that I have spoken to, the musicians, David Crosby, Jeff Beck, who may be a little confused, troubled, or, whatever. And I made a brief contact with them to sort of make sure they were doing okay. So, Bruce Moen, here we come. Bruce seems to have manifested for this occasion only, perhaps. I'm not saying it's his permanent astral residence, but somewhere in the foothills in Colorado, foothills of the Rockies, a sort of rustic cabin on a hill overlooking a beautiful valley. And he's manifested a form that is similar to how I remember him, a little younger and handsomer, but that essential Bruce Moen face and smile. And I say, Bruce, it's lovely to see you again after all this time. And he says, oh, Gordon, it hasn't been that long. You've been here before. You just don't remember. And I say, you're probably right, Bruce. I know that we forget a lot of what we experience when we come out here. And I just accept that fact that you don't remember everything. And this notion of permanent consciousness, both in and out of the body, is a goal one would like to aim for rather than one which one has achieved. And how about you? What sort of consciousness are you experiencing? Well, as you can imagine, you and the interested parties that have followed you in this meeting and are hovering behind you, semi-awake and absorbing unconsciously. For you guys and the ones that will watch on the internet, I have a beautiful astral life. With family and friends close by. I live in a community. I participate in that community in many ways that you would be familiar with from Earth. There is a great pleasure in being in a community and being with others of various levels of consciousness and accomplishment. I feel no need to be a standout, a special person. But yes, I do hold counseling sessions and classes for those that wish to extend their experiences. As you know, many people arrive here with a basic smattering of knowledge about the afterlife and without having fully explored it, as I did. And they can always use assistance as they sort of start to explore here once they get settled. It's interesting to me to observe how the thought forms of our culture and society extend into the astral plane. This is a very American community, although it is diverse, as America is, and was and is reflective of concerns that take up the day-to-day lives of Americans on Earth. People, well, there's a variety, of course. Some people take an interest in what's going on in the politics and the culture, and others don't. And then others have contact with their loved ones back on Earth, either through going back and visiting with them, or having them come here unconsciously and visit with them, as people do and don't remember. So the consciousness of what it means to be American and to be concerned about our concerns in the world, which are perhaps different from other cultures and countries, permeates here. And but it evaporates from various individuals, like as they learn about their past lives in which they were perhaps anything but American, any number of cultures and religions, and their recent life as Americans, or their recent couple of lives, doesn't fade into insignificance, but rather takes its proper place in amongst all the other lives. That's an interest of mine. And I can hear your question, Gord. You're going to ask about the device, that the sort of transcommunication device that I was helping develop through telepathic means while I was still on Earth. That sort of astral phone that never seemed to quite work, and we were never quite sure why. Although we did work on it quite carefully for a number of years. And a prototype was developed, but it did not seem to work that well. And we had a number of ideas about why it didn't work that well. But the time wasn't right. This would be, probably 20 years ago, your time. And we did try it out on, certain people. And I know, Bruce, a friend of mine was one of the people you tried it out on, but it didn't seem to work for him. But I certainly was inspired by your vision of seeing how happy young grandchildren would be to talk to Granddad once Granddad had passed on. And I agree entirely. It would be a wonderful thing. And I'm guessing you're working on it with others on Earth, trying to modify it and perfect it. Yes, we are. Well, good luck with that. I'll say one thing, Bruce. Because of the internet and podcasts and YouTube videos, there's a number of sites dealing with near-death experiences and what people experience. Now, I know that was ongoing in your time, but I tell you, it's way more accessible now. You can watch near-death videos for hours on end. And so all those insights that people get that totally transcend the limited understanding of our physical plane, even if the person that has died for a little while has a bit of knowledge about the astral plane and past lives. It's really quite remarkable. And that, I think, is affecting people a lot too, because some of these videos have tens of thousands of people having watched them. And perhaps you're aware of this. To some degree, yes, I am aware of it. We know that the internet has increased manyfold in the time since I was there, although I did make my own videos and were well received. But I was still going around giving classes, going around geographically. And if I was there now, that would not be necessary. Everything would be online, which is a step towards how things are here. You don't really have to travel, although people do just for the sheer pleasure of it, and I certainly do. And I can sense you're wondering, do I travel to other planets? Do I talk to other beings from other planetary systems? Yes, I do. And their stories are just as fascinating as the Earth story. I wouldn't know where to start, actually, but because there's so many, it'd be like giving a report on the various nationalities around the world. You could talk about Chinese people. You could talk about South African people. You could talk about Russian culture. You could talk about Thai culture and their belief systems. But there's a sense that you have to be careful, because by talking about some and not others, you're giving a position of importance to the cultures that you mention. And as one goes on, one realizes that no one culture is any more important than another. No one planet's any more important than another, regardless of their technological advancement. Which brings me to another point. We're very interested here, those that choose to take an interest, as I do, about the recent explosion of official and semi-official information about the visitors and their crafts and the technologies that the Earth has developed from those crafts. This, of course, was something that was waiting to happen for a number of years, but that has finally happened through whistleblowers and Congress passing amnesties is a great step forward as far as we're concerned. Those of us here that take an interest, a great step forward. The potential for opening and expanding consciousness through this knowledge is tremendous. And we see it as an explosion of freedom in thought and freedom in imagination after the period of lockdown controls, which seemed to emanate from a humanity's wish to be controlled, as well as those who wanted to control, in all those situations that are controllers and those who are fearful enough to want to be controlled. And the mechanism, of course, is fear. And as I've said many times on Earth, fear and love cannot exist in the same place at the same time. And for a while, fear was dominant. In most places of the world, not everywhere, but fear was dominant, and many souls arrived on the astral plane in that fear, although it's a matter of much debate about whether any more than usual, because as you know, Gordon, you explore these things, many people arrive on the astral plane every minute of every day. People are dying all the time. So I'm not sure if anyone bothers to keep statistics on it, I think they're there, but I mean, who cares? When it's in the tens of thousands every day, does it really matter? And during the lockdowns, when the virus seemed to be taking a lot of lives, yes, it was, but how many more than usual? I was more interested in the state of mind that people arrived in, a mixture of fear, upset, relief, anger. But again, those emotions are experienced a lot by people. People who are angry that they died too young, people that are relieved because they lived into old age, decrepit old age, and weren't very happy about it and wanted to transit sooner. All these variations. And but the general sense of love replacing fear around the planet more recently, despite the wars and the radical changes in weather, is of great interest to me. It seems to me you're on the edge on the planet, on the edge of a rather big expansion of consciousness, which we spoke of as, the Earth changes. Bob Monroe talked about that years ago, and got people to go to Focus 35, where many beings were observing the Earth changes from a comfortable distance, beings from other areas, of course. And we were aware that this was going to happen, but we're not entirely sure when. And I certainly, once you get here, there's a lot of things you don't care that much about. You realize things are unfolding according to some plan, even if you can't figure out what the plan is. And you tend not to fret and worry about stuff. And certainly hanging out at the Monroe Institute here, or there, as we used to call it, TMI there, and the kind of people that participate or come by and visit, or is very uplifting. They tend to be turned on, positive souls. Bruce, I had that experience myself years ago before I really knew about you. I took a great interest in the crop circles and attended many conferences and visits to various crop circles in England. And the people that showed up from around the world to participate in that were very much open-minded and imaginative and ready for the new vibration. And it was quite pleasurable just to be with them, because they did not have the ordinary closed down mindset. And I wonder if that's what you're experiencing there at TMI there. And he said, oh yeah, it's wonderful. And as you know, Gordon, there's plenty of areas, communities, landscapes, cultures of conventionality in behavior and thought. And those souls are content with their paradise and don't need to expand it, at least not yet. And that's fine. You can go to a ball game, you can go to ice skating, you can go to a restaurant and eat shrimp and lobster. You can participate in any number of cultural activities where people like that are happy, content, and ready to be entertained and amused, just like on Earth. And there is great pleasure in doing so. Watching the various athletes play according to the new astral plane rules is quite fascinating, because, as you know, they all want to control the ball, and they have to agree to not to. Although there are some areas where they don't agree to control the ball or the puck, and it flies all over the place. And it's a little chaotic. But later on, they learn to, the same sort of pledge. I will not control the ball with my mind. I will not control the puck with the mind. And those games seem to be rather more regular. Exciting, but still regular. But controlling one's thoughts here, that's something that, everyone has to learn to do, of course. And at some point or other, they learn, they get the habit, they get to see how automatic thought can be, producing that perfect cup of coffee that you feel like you need every morning, even if there isn't really a morning. But that's a basic one. Everybody learns to do that. And children learn to manifest all sorts of things. Toys, candy, milkshakes, ice cream. So a very pleasant life one can lead here. And I'm certainly not averse to comfort and joy and pleasure. And there's nothing about the dedicated adept me. I'm a fun-loving guy. And I hear you're thinking, am I still interested in the sort of engineering stuff that I was doing on Earth? Yes, things are much more advanced here in a technical sense. And we take time tussling with engineering issues and problems that are current on Earth, and we try to work with them and help out through mental telepathy the earthbound engineers and scientists that are working on those problems. And a bit technical for your level, but I think you understand what I'm getting at here. And certainly those involved in IT on Earth, I know that they're constantly being fed information about potential advancements and updates, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's an area of furious creative activity on Earth, and is influenced by what goes on here, as are many other activities. I think you know, Gordon, that the trade in creative telepathy between our plane and your plane is constant and quite intense. And that's because many people here desire to be of helpful influence, sometimes from an ego standpoint, and sometimes just from disinterested compassion. All methods and paths for all levels of soul manifestation. I was going to say accomplishment, but maybe manifestation is best, because when people are here, they learn that they're slowly manifesting the true nature of their soul. When they first get here, it's more just, a little bit, and there's always more to it than they realize, as it was for me. And I can see you're getting a little faded, so I'll let you go. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks very much, Bruce. It's a great pleasure to hang out with you, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And people will be interested to hear that you're doing just swell. Bye now.